House of the Dragon Season 1 has finished its run on HBO, 10 episodes, 1 hour each. The new prequel show to the wildly successful Game of Thrones based on another book set in the same universe, Fire and Blood. It tells the story of the civil war within the House of Targaryen that happened about 200 years before Game of Thrones events came to be. Or rather, to be specific, the entire show is supposed to tell the story of that war, but the first season is mainly setting up the pieces for the inevitable chaos to come. Now, I have a strange relationship with Game of Thrones personally. I read all the books before the show even started coming out and I loved them. Then I watched the first season of the show and dropped it somewhere in season 2, and I can't even really remember what was the specific reason. I think I just didn't like some of the changes that they did to the books. And I refused to see it for a really good show that it was at the time. And at least for a time, because as soon as the show overtook the books, it famously went off the cliff in terms of quality. And so I never really regretted watching it until the end, seeing the people's reactions to the final seasons. On the other hand, as it became increasingly obvious that George R.R. Martin would never actually finish the remaining 2 novels in the series, I did become somewhat angry at ever getting pulled into this universe and invested in it. Never to get any closure and a solid conclusion. So I wasn't really very hyped up for House of the Dragon initially, but then I thought, you know what? It's a fresh new thing, and it's based on a story that is already finished in the books, so all the material is there, so it's kind of difficult to mess it up at the end. I'm just gonna give it a chance, see how it goes. And I'm very happy that I did it, because I loved the first season, and I'm very excited for what's to come. Basically what it is what Game of Thrones was at its best. Adult political intrigue dressed up in medieval fantasy clothes with the addition of decent action and dragons. Now, the first season of House of the Dragon doesn't actually feature all that much action, and even what little there is isn't actually perfect. I think my main criticisms would come with the action sequences, like Daemon's fight on the beaches of Stepstones. I thought it was extremely cheesy. But where the show really shines is in the intrigue and the writing and the characters and the performances. Pretty much all the main characters are written in a way that they're very morally grey. So there isn't really a single person in the show that is without fault, that is purely good and decent and honorable. Most of them have flaws, and you kind of have to end up choosing the lesser evil, choosing who you're going to root for, knowing that they could very well be viewed as the villain or at least an antagonist. Pretty much all of the characters are also played excellently. Special shout out to Paddy Considine as King Viserys, who started off not very interesting to me, and then over the course of the season grew to be my favorite character. And episode 8 features a powerhouse performance from Considine. The throne room scene and then the following dinner speech are just absolute masterclass. I really liked the bold decision to have the first season span 20 years of time and even have a recast of 2 major characters in the middle of it, as there is a huge time skip there. Apparently some of the larger events in the show were only like a single line of text of explanation in the books and in the book, and the showrunners just decided to expand on this backstory so as to give us much more context. And I think it works, at least so far. Having spent so much time with these characters before any actual war begins, actually makes it all the more tragic. It's like experiencing this inevitable car crash in slow motion. You can see the trajectories of the characters and the way that they are trapped in them. Some of them are trapped because of their own pride, some of them because of expectations or machinations of others, and some, like Daemon, because they simply don't give a fuck. And it's all the more tragic because they're essentially family. They're members of the same family who are pitted against each other by themselves and by the circumstances around them. I think it's at the same time fascinating, amazing, and heartbreaking. And I also had this thought during one of the episodes. The show was directly competing with The Rings of Power, the Lord of the Rings show coming out on Amazon Prime at basically the same time. And week by week, I would find myself profoundly bored each Friday with the grandiose and gorgeous but ultimately empty Rings of Power, only to be glued to the screen every Monday to House of the Dragon, with the show gripping me completely, and often just with a simple conversation. It really shows what a world of difference good writing can make. Of course, that is not to say that House of the Dragon is poorly made outside of the scripts. On the contrary, the production design is top-notch, as usual for HBO. Sets and costumes and locations look terrific. The CGI dragons are fantastic and used to great effect. And there are some small touches that I liked as well, as fan of the original books, like the redesigned Iron Throne. I enjoyed it. I don't think it's perfect. I have some small criticisms of it. I mentioned the whole Daemon on the beach thing. I think that the way the coronation scene in episode 9 ended left something to be desired. But, as much as I don't think it's the deepest show ever, as some people paint it to be, it is pretty engrossing with the themes it explores. It captures you with the writing and the performances and offers a great fantasy spectacle as the payoff. And we should be getting even more of that payoff for the next seasons to come. As I said, the first one is almost entirely set up, but man, what a setup it is. Quality show.